From my own personal experience, I can tell you that delegates skew much older, much whiter, and much more conservative than even the GOP as a whole.
President Trump just announced that going to church is now considered essential. I thought that happened in 1776.
They're using fascist tactics to shut down free speech here in America. They are the real fascists, you can tell. Just take one look at them.
They want to destroy our very way of life. And if you wanted to fight, well, you've got one.
Hey, what's going on, Gab TV? I just wanted to do a quick stream here and talk about this website, becomeadelegate.com. And it is set up by this giant nerd named Jason, I believe. And I had gotten into a small Twitter argument over wildfires with a bunch of climate freaks on Twitter. I did a previous video about this, and it was on the Becky Edwards for Senate Twitter page, and she's running against Mike Lee. She's a fake Republican, a rhino, and she's really a wolf in sheep's clothing, in my opinion. She's a pure through and through Democrat extremist running as a Republican because she knows that a Democrat has no chance of election here in Utah. And this guy, Jason, I think that's his name, I can't remember, but anyway, he's got this website, becomeadelegate.com, and it has obviously the elephants up there for Republicans, and he says, "Welcome to Become a Delegate. This is our movement to put new voices in positions of power for good through the party delegate process in Utah. Every election year, state delegates are chosen from every neighborhood in Utah, including yours. Anyone can become a state delegate. You just have to attend a precinct meeting of about 10 to 20 registered party members and be elected by that group to be their representative at your party's state convention later. If you successfully become a delegate, you help decide who is the party's nominee for the United States Congress and other statewide offices." And here's the key part. "We need Utahns from a much more diverse set of viewpoints to start coming to the convention. We especially need a new generation of voices at a time when so many looming problems will be felt by the youngest among us." Now, if you heard the code speak that he's got in there, when so many looming problems will be felt by the most by the youngest among us. This guy is all about climate change. He is through and through a climate change extremist. Climate change is his ideology, it's his religion, and he has carefully crafted this website to kind of allude to that fact, but also to obfuscate that and kind of keep it on the down low. He just wants to make it seem like it's about new voices, new generation. But what he's trying to do is recruit young climate change oriented people to become delegates in the Republican Party. And this is how the creep happens. This is how the slow creep to becoming a permanent blue state happens. It's people like this that get involved in the Republican process that are not Republicans. This guy is not a conservative. He is not a Republican. But he is pretending, and he set up this whole website where he's pretending to be one. And because his whole goal is to recruit climate change activists to get involved as a Republican, to get involved in the dominant party here in the state of Utah, to help steer the direction of the party. And once that happens, once you get these activists kind of ingrained in the process, he's telling the truth here. He says to get into positions of power. And if you've watched any of my videos, pretty much at the end of every video I talk about how we need to get involved at the local level and take over our city and state governments, our school boards, because if we don't do that, if we don't take over at the local level, then we can forget about what's happening in Washington, D.C., or who the next occupant of the White House is. That's a really important step that people need to be focusing on. Conservatives, Republicans, America First. If you believe in America First, you need to be getting involved at the local level because that's where it matters. And that's where we have the most power. And if we don't have control at the local level, then the next time we do get a President Trump or a real conservative into the White House, we won't have the infrastructure to be able to support his plan or the agenda that the next president wants to push forward. So here's this website, becomeadelegate.com. Let's watch his video really quick just for you can get an idea who this guy is.
Hi there, my name is Trevor. Welcome to Become a Delegate.
Trevor.
Our movement to
My
put
bad.
younger voices in positions of increased political power here in the state of Utah. Right now, the political system is incredibly polarized. Tribal politics and public smackdowns get all the headlines. The younger generation is much more collaborative and solution-oriented, but the problem is we only make up 3% of Utah's state delegates. Now, what's a state delegate? It's a volunteer position that any registered Republican can occupy no matter their age, and it has 1,000 times more voting power than the average Utah voter.
There's an important key there. It is a very powerful position compared to your average voter. And that's what Trevor's goal is here, to get people involved at the base level to kind of steer the position of the Republican Party.
Election year, state delegates are chosen from every neighborhood in Utah, including yours. Anyone can be a state delegate.
Yeah, we already covered all this. So he's basically reading what he has typed here. Now, here's his resources. Let's open up a couple of these here. It says, welcome to Become a Delegate. Welcome, thank you, and congratulations. Welcome to Become a Delegate, our Utah GOP Convention Delegate Initiative. We formed in May of 2021 after a conversation among several of our founders. We realized it was essential that the GOP attract young, bright, and moderate delegates for their 2022 state convention. Only then can we start to make progress on some of the biggest, most important issues of our state and country. Some of our leading issues include climate change, fiscal responsibility, and kindness in the public sphere. So climate change and your feelings are the most important things on Trevor's agenda. But you probably have your own set of interests too. The political system here in Utah gives outsized influence to its party's state delegates and city and county delegates. The state delegates especially have the ability to nominate the party's candidates for federal office, amend the party's bylaws, and generally set the direction for the party for the coming election cycle. We have experience in previous election cycles running for and serving as both state and county delegates. But we also realize that it's nearly impossible for younger Republicans and would-be Republicans to know the ins and outs of where without someone to mentor them. The current system skews toward older delegates who know the process inside and out and will continue to do so without proactive efforts to engage younger delegates. Over the next several days and weeks, we'll send you a series of emails, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Here's the next one. Topic 1. Depending on how you found us, you may be relatively young, either a millennial or Gen Z, and regardless of your age, politics may feel foreign, stuffy, or unnatural to you. I get it. I was once there too. But I've always been inspired by the greatness of our country. Sure, it's not a perfect democracy, nor did our founders ever intend it to be. Yeah, they didn't intend it to be a democracy. They intended it to be a representative republic. But indeed, it's a country that allows us to organize ourselves and enjoy many liberties that billions on this planet do not enjoy. Now, since it's not a perfect democracy, our governmental system purposely places additional power and influence in the hands of some people who are meant to represent the rest of us. They are empowered to speak on behalf of those who elect them, under the assumption that most people are too busy with their lives to be actually and directly involved in the day-to-day running of government. In Utah, the party system, especially in this case, the party is run largely by its delegates, so-called because of their precincts will delegate them their powers. Those delegates are elected by their neighborhoods at a meeting held every 2 years, especially around March. In addition to other officers, precinct and chair and vice chair, each precinct elects the state delegates and 2 county delegates. The state delegate travels to the state convention where they transact the party's business for the state. Likewise, the county delegates at their respective county conventions. The most important business at these conventions is nominating party candidates. Now, if you have somebody like Trevor here in the delegate position for the majority of the state, then a Mike Lee would not be nominated. They would nominate a freak like Becky Edwards, who's more interested in climate change then reducing the size and scope of government, including all the federal delegation, and is nominated at the state convention if a candidate receives over 60%. Apart from the convention route just discussed, there is now a second option. Any candidate may gather signatures in advance of the convention to ensure a spot on the primary ballot. But that's not what we're concerned with here. As you can imagine, many candidates will go to great lengths to court their delegates. The power they wield collectively is huge. For any candidate who does not have the resources and popular support to gather signatures, delegates are absolutely essential. If and when you are elected a delegate, you can expect to have multiple candidates for office calling you directly to ask for your support. As you can imagine, this is a lot of power and thus responsibility. It is my personal belief that this power should not be concentrated in the hands of older people who have been doing this for decades. Our younger generation needs to step up and get involved. From my own personal experience, I can tell you that delegates skew much older, much whiter, and much more conservative than even the GOP as a whole. Now, how do you know that, Trevor? I would posit here that the delegates are in line with the state as a whole, and your political leanings of climate change and anti-whiteness, it seems, do not align with the state as a whole. So he says he thinks the delegates skew much older, much whiter, and much more conservative than even the GOP as a whole. That is why the system needs us. That is why we need to step up and be counted. What he's saying here is the party delegates in the entire state are far too conservative, too white, compared to the GOP as a whole. And that's because people like Trevor are getting involved in the Republican process to bring in their own activism, their own initiatives for climate change and other extremist viewpoints, because they know they don't really have a chance as Democrats here in the state. And people like Trevor, who've probably been voting Democrat all these, for many years, haven't had any real successes here in the state. And they know the only way to move forward is to pretend to be Republicans and change the system from the inside. So he has this tool. I'm not going to go through all of his campaign positions here. You kind of get the idea when he gives out those code words like too conservative and too white and climate change as a priority topic. But he's got this great tool. Obviously, nerds make some of the best tools. He's got this great tool. This is for the state of Utah. There might be even, tools out there for your state as well if you're not in my state. But you can zoom in and see where you live and kind of find your zone. And you can see the more populous areas. The more populous the area, the smaller the district. So let's zoom in here to Payson, where I live. And we'll just click on one of these. And you can see it comes up with this information. It gives you some info here of basically the map for your precinct. Let's go a little closer. We can see that's what it is. And this tool will allow you to locate your precinct. So it says, click on the icon. A table will show up with various pieces of information. What you want is your precinct ID. This is your precinct number. Each precinct number is 3 letters followed by 3 digits. For instance, precinct ODG 12 means he's in Ogden's 12th precinct. Once you have a precinct number, hold on to it. At a later point, your precinct meeting locations and times will be made available. If you're signed up for our emails, we'll send you that information as soon as we get it. Update. Precinct meetings are scheduled for March 8th, 2022. So, this tool that he's put together, and this Become a Precinct whole thing has a lot of tips. It even goes into what to expect at neighborhood meetings and how to be elected a state delegate. And they get into things like coaching people on what to say and how to look presentable and show up in a suit and tie or a button-up shirt and a tie if they're going to win the respect of the people in their precinct committee, and they have a better chance of being elected a delegate. So you can see these guys are going to quite an effort here to get young climate change oriented people involved in the election process at the local level, because they know the only way to gain power politically in this country is to take over at the local level of our city governments, our state governments, and our school boards. Mainly, those are the main three. And if we don't get involved, if we don't step up and fight for our country, then it will be lost to the progressive people with progressive ideologies like the guy who's put together this website. So I would highly suggest that you find out in your state, find out where your voter precinct is, find out when your precinct committee meeting is, attend the meeting, and if you yourself don't become a delegate, but make sure that you are voting for a delegate that represents your values, represents America first, and get involved in the local city governments, the local state politics. We need to take over our state legislatures and get people elected who believe in America first, and go to our school board meetings and continue to speak out. We can't let designations and memos from Attorney General Merrick Garland that are declaring people like us to be terrorists. We can't let that silence us. And if we do, then they win. We have to get involved at the local level. We have to rise up. This is the time. If we wait for 2022 or 2024, it will be too late. This is how we get out the vote. This is how we get the silent majority that Trevor feels like they don't represent him. The silent majority needs to rise up and take control of our country's political process. And this is how we do it. So please get involved at the local level. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.